The dog had one command left in him, and somehow, it was Caleb's name. Gunnery Sergeant Caleb Hayes saw Ghost through a wall of blowing snow less than 50 yards from the old county road. The German Shepherd's sable coat crusted with ice, his paws sinking into drifts as he dragged a weathered green ammunition box by a frayed canvas strap. The metal scraped over frozen ground with a harsh, uneven sound that seemed too loud for the empty Colorado night. Caleb moved toward him slowly, boots breaking through fresh snow, one gloved hand raised. "Ghost!" The dog stopped. His ears shifted forward, but he did not release the strap. Caleb had known him years ago, when Master Sergeant Ryan Mercer could send Ghost through a training course with a whistle, a hand signal, or sometimes nothing more than a look. Back then, Ghost had been fast enough to make every exercise seem easy. Tonight, each step looked borrowed. Caleb crouched beside him. "That is enough." Ghost tried to pull again. The box moved less than a foot. His front legs trembled. Caleb reached for the strap, but Ghost tightened his jaw. No growl. No warning. Just refusal. Caleb studied him. "You are freezing, buddy." Snow had packed between the dog's toes, and the fur along his chest was soaked. His breathing came in short white clouds. Caleb touched the side of the box instead. Ghost immediately washed his hand. That was when Caleb noticed the lettering beneath the scratches and faded paint. Hayes. His own last name. Caleb stared at it. He had never seen the box before. The wind moved through the pines behind them, carrying the clean scent of snow and cold bark. Ghost shifted his weight, tried to stand straighter, and nearly slipped. Caleb caught him gently under the chest. "Easy." The dog looked toward the road, then back at Caleb, as if waiting for something. A memory surfaced without warning. Ryan standing on an old training field years earlier, laughing as Ghost carried a canvas pouch toward Caleb. "Find. Carry. Hayes." Caleb had always thought the last word was Ryan making the drill personal for a joke. Now, kneeling beside a nearly exhausted dog with his name carved into an ammunition box, the joke no longer felt like one. Caleb swallowed. "Hayes." Ghost's ears lifted. His eyes sharpened despite the cold. Caleb felt the old training pattern click into place between them. He placed one hand on the box and said the phrase Ryan used at the end of retrieval exercises. "Delivery complete." Ghost held the strap for one more second. Then his jaw opened. The canvas fell into the snow. His body followed. Caleb caught him before he hit the ground, pulling the German Shepherd against his chest and wrapping his heavy coat around the wet fur. "I have you." Ghost did not struggle. For the first time, the mission was over. Caleb looked at the ammunition box beside them. Near the latch, almost hidden beneath rust, were two smaller initials. R.M. Ryan Mercer. Gone for nearly 2 years. Caleb stared at the letters while Ghost's breathing warmed the inside of his coat. The dog had remembered a command Caleb himself had forgotten. And whatever Ryan had placed inside that box had waited all this time for Ghost to finish delivering it. 3 hours earlier, Caleb Hayes had been driving north toward a retired working dog rehabilitation ranch outside Colorado Springs when Dr. Lauren Bennett called him. Snow had already begun sweeping across the highway in long white sheets, and the mountains ahead were disappearing behind a gray wall of weather. Caleb answered through the truck speakers. "Hayes." Lauren did not waste time. "Ghost is gone." Caleb's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "How long?" "About 40 minutes. Maybe less." Caleb looked at the road ahead. "Did he break through a fence?" "No. That is the problem." Lauren's voice carried the controlled concern of someone trying not to make a bad situation sound worse. "A service gate was left open during a maintenance delivery. We checked the cameras. Ghost did not bolt. He walked out." Caleb slowed as a gust pushed snow across the pavement. Toward what? The old training property. Silence filled the cab. Caleb had not heard that phrase in a long time. The ranch had once shared several miles of wooded training ground with military and law enforcement working dog programs. Most of it had been closed after the facility downsized. Ryan Mercer had spent hundreds of hours there with Ghost. So had Caleb. "Send me the footage." "Already on your phone." Caleb pulled into a turnout and watched the clip. Ghost appeared near the service gate, calm and alert. He stepped outside, paused, and turned his head toward a narrow trail disappearing into the trees. No frantic circling, no hesitation. Then he walked toward it with the steady pace of a dog following something familiar. Caleb replayed the clip. Lauren's voice came through the speakers. He did not look lost. He was not. Caleb started driving again. When he reached the ranch 20 minutes later, Lauren was waiting under the covered entrance in a heavy parka. She led him toward the kennel area while snow collected along the fence lines. Ghost was only here temporarily, she said. His current caretaker is recovering from surgery. He has been quiet, healthy, predictable. Nothing unusual until today. Caleb studied the empty run. What changed? Lauren pointed toward 2 maintenance trucks parked near the rear property line. That section of the old grounds was opened this morning for the first time in months. They needed access to a drainage line beyond the storage buildings. Caleb looked toward the trees. The old service gate stood open just far enough for a German shepherd to pass. Beyond it, a line of paw prints was already fading beneath new snow. Caleb crouched and examined them. The stride was even, deliberate. He stood and followed the tracks to the first weathered training marker, a wooden post nearly hidden beneath snow. Then another marker appeared farther ahead. Caleb stopped. He knew the route. Ryan used to build retrieval drills along this exact path, sending Ghost from marker to marker before directing him toward a final destination. Lauren caught up behind him. Do you think he is searching for Ryan? Caleb looked into the trees. No. The answer hurt more than he expected. Ghost was too well trained to chase a memory as if it were a scent. Caleb stepped forward again. He is following something Ryan taught him. The snow deepened as the trail climbed. Caleb could almost hear old sounds beneath the wind. Ryan's whistle, Ghost's paws striking packed dirt, laughter after a missed cue, coffee poured from a dented thermos before sunrise. He had avoided those memories for nearly 2 years. Ghost had not. Another 100 yards ahead, the paw prints turned sharply toward the abandoned section of the property. Caleb followed. Whatever the dog was doing, it had not begun with an escape. Ghost had left because an old road had opened again, and somewhere beyond the trees, a command had been waiting. The trail narrowed as Caleb moved deeper into the abandoned training grounds, the fresh paw prints leading him through pine trees bent beneath the weight of snow. Every 100 yards or so, an old marker appeared beside the path, faded numbers barely visible under years of weather. Caleb knew them before he brushed the snow away. Marker 4. Marker 7. Marker 11. Ryan had built this route around repetition, teaching Ghost to move from one fixed point to another until the pattern became something deeper than instruction. Caleb could still see them here on warmer mornings years ago, Ryan standing with a whistle between his teeth while Ghost waited perfectly still for the next cue. Do not overthink him, Ryan used to say. He remembers what matters. Caleb had laughed then. Tonight, the words followed him through the trees. The tracks continued for nearly a mile before turning toward a low storage building at the edge of the old property. The structure looked untouched, its roof heavy with snow, one side partly hidden by overgrown brush. Caleb approached slowly. The door stood open several inches. Ghost's tracks disappeared inside. Caleb pushed it wider and swept his flashlight across the room. Dusty training cones leaned against one wall. Old canvas leads hung from rusted hooks. A wooden pallet had been dragged several feet from the rear corner. Beneath it, one section of flooring had been scratched aside, revealing a shallow rectangular space lined with dark waxed cloth. Empty. Caleb crouched beside it. The size was unmistakable. Something had been stored there. Something heavy enough to leave a clean impression in the dust. He aimed the flashlight toward the doorway. A fresh drag mark crossed the floor, joined Ghost's paw prints, and continued back into the snow. Caleb remained still for a moment. The route, the hidden compartment, the object Ghost had removed. None of it was random. Then memory arrived with painful clarity. Ryan standing beside this same building, holding a canvas pouch, while Ghost waited 20 feet away. Find, Ryan had said. Ghost disappeared around the structure. A minute later, he returned with the pouch. Ryan pointed toward Caleb. Carry. Hayes. Ghost delivered it directly to Caleb's boots. The exercise happened so many times that Caleb stopped thinking about the wording. He assumed Ryan used his name because it made the drill easier to remember. Now he understood that the name itself had become part of the command. Caleb stepped outside and followed the drag line. Ghost had already traveled more than a mile carrying whatever he had recovered from the floor. The snow showed how difficult the return had become. At first, the paw prints were evenly spaced. Farther on, they shortened. The drag line stopped repeatedly beside shallow impressions where Ghost had rested. Caleb quickened his pace. Ghost! Only the wind answered. He continued past another marker, then heard something faint beyond the trees. Scrape. Silence. Scrape again. Caleb moved toward the sound and saw him at last. Ghost was perhaps 200 yards ahead, head lowered, a frayed canvas strap clenched between his teeth. Behind him dragged an old green ammunition box. The shepherd stopped, breathing hard. Caleb approached without reaching for the strap. You found it. Ghost looked at him, then turned forward again. Caleb's flashlight moved across the box as the dog pulled. Beneath snow and scratched paint, a single word slowly became visible. Hayes. Caleb stopped walking. Ryan had not hidden an object for Ghost to retrieve someday. He had hidden a message with a destination. Caleb stayed beside Ghost as the German shepherd pulled the ammunition box through the deepening snow, refusing to let more than a few feet open between them. The old training road curved downhill toward the county access lane, where Caleb's truck waited beyond the trees. Less than 200 yards remained, but Ghost was slowing fast. He would take 4 steps, stop, breathe, then force himself forward again. Caleb could hear the metal box scraping over patches of frozen dirt beneath the snow. You have done enough, he said. Ghost kept moving. Caleb reached toward the strap once, but the dog tightened his jaw and turned his head away. There was no aggression in the movement, only purpose. Caleb knew that look. Ryan used to call it locked in, the moment when Ghost understood exactly what had been asked of him and would not accept a half-finished task. Caleb walked beside him instead. 50 yards passed. Then 30. Ghost stumbled and caught himself. Caleb moved closer. Easy. The dog tried again. His paws slipped beneath him. Caleb placed one hand against his chest, supporting some of his weight without touching the strap. For several seconds, they moved that way together, man and dog beside an old green box carrying a name Caleb had not expected to see again. The truck headlights were visible now through the trees. Ghost stopped. His breathing was shallow and fast. Caleb crouched beside him. Look at me. Ghost's amber eyes lifted. Caleb remembered the training field, Ryan's voice carrying across summer grass. Find. Carry. Hayes. And then the words that always ended the exercise. Caleb touched the side of the box. Hayes. Ghost's ears rose immediately. The reaction was small, but unmistakable. Caleb felt something cold move through him that had nothing to do with the weather. Delivery complete. Ghost held the strap for 1 second longer. Then his jaw opened. The canvas dropped into the snow. His entire body seemed to surrender at once. Caleb caught him under the chest and lowered him carefully against his knees. I have you. Ghost did not try to reach for the strap again. The command had released him from whatever responsibility he had carried all the way from the storage building. Caleb removed his heavy field coat and wrapped it around the shepherd. Beneath the wet fur, Ghost felt dangerously cold. Caleb glanced toward the box. Beneath the word Hayes, another marking showed through the scratched paint near the latch. 2 initials. R.M. Ryan Mercer. Caleb stopped breathing for a moment. Ryan had been gone for almost 2 years. Yet his initials sat beside Caleb's name on a box Ghost had just recovered from a hiding place along a route only the 3 of them had once known. Caleb wanted to open it. Every unanswered question seemed to live behind that rusted latch. But Ghost shifted weakly against him, and the choice became simple. Caleb lifted the dog into his arms. The box can wait. He carried Ghost toward the truck, then returned for the ammunition box and placed it on the rear floorboard where the shepherd could see it. Ghost's eyes followed the box until Caleb shut the door. He called Lauren as he started the engine. I found him. Her relief lasted less than a second. How does he look? Caleb turned the heater high and looked back at Ghost wrapped in his coat. Cold. Exhausted. We are coming in. Lauren told him the treatment room would be ready. Caleb ended the call and pulled onto the county road. In the mirror, Ghost finally closed his eyes. The ammunition box remained unopened beneath him. Whatever Ryan had left inside had already waited 2 years. Caleb decided it could wait another hour. The drive back to the rehabilitation ranch took nearly 40 minutes because the storm had thickened enough to erase the edges of the road. Caleb kept one hand steady on the wheel and checked the rearview mirror every few seconds. Ghost remained wrapped in the heavy coat on the back seat, his head resting near the old ammunition box. The dog's breathing was still shallow, but it was regular. That was enough for Caleb to keep moving. Lauren was waiting when the truck pulled beneath the clinic awning. She opened the rear door, took one look at Ghost, and immediately called for warm blankets and fluids. Caleb carried the German Shepherd inside, while 2 staff members cleared the treatment table. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, clean linen, and warm air from a portable heater. Lauren worked quickly without panic. She checked Ghost's temperature, listened to his heart and lungs, examined his paws, and began warming him gradually. "He is exhausted and cold, but he is responsive," she said. "That matters." Caleb stood beside the table with snow melting from his hair and sleeves. The ammunition box waited near the doorway where he had set it down. For the first time since seeing his own name on the lid, the box was within reach and Ghost was no longer fighting to protect it. Caleb could have opened it in seconds. He did not move. Lauren looked toward him. "You can sit down." Caleb pulled a chair close to Ghost instead. "I am fine." She gave him a knowing look, but did not argue. 20 minutes passed. Ghost's trembling began to ease beneath the blankets. Caleb rested one hand near the shepherd's shoulder, close enough for Ghost to feel him without disturbing the equipment. The dog opened his eyes once and looked toward the doorway. Caleb followed his gaze to the ammunition box. "It is here," he said quietly. Ghost looked back at him. "You finished the job." The shepherd's eyes closed again. Lauren checked the monitor, then adjusted the blanket around his chest. "He needs time." Caleb nodded. "He has it." Another half hour passed before Ghost's breathing deepened and the tension left his body. Lauren finally stepped back. His temperature is moving in the right direction. Caleb released a breath he had not realized he was holding. Only then did he look at the box again. It sat beneath the fluorescent light, scratched, dented, and streaked with melted snow. Haze remained visible across the lid. Near the latch, Ryan Mercer's initials seemed almost darker now that Caleb knew they were there. Lauren followed his eyes. "Do you know what is inside?" "No." "Do you know why Ryan would have hidden it?" Caleb shook his head. "Not yet." Lauren glanced at Ghost. "Then maybe now is the time." Caleb stood and carried the box to a small table beside the treatment area. The metal felt colder than the room. He ran his thumb over the rusted latch, but stopped before opening it. Behind him, Ghost shifted beneath the blankets. Caleb turned. The shepherd was awake again, watching him. Something about that gaze made the moment feel less like permission and more like completion. Caleb faced the box and lifted the latch. It resisted once, then opened with a soft click. Inside lay a faded working dog patch, a pair of military dog tags, an old photograph, a folded letter, a brass key, a worn challenge coin, and a compact digital recorder wrapped in cloth. Caleb picked up the recorder. His hands, steady through the entire night, suddenly felt less certain. He pressed the power button. One file appeared. He selected it. Static filled the room for a moment. Then Ryan Mercer's voice came through the small speaker. "If Ghost brought this to you." Then he remembered. Caleb did not move. Ryan's voice sounded older than Caleb remembered, but the dry humor was still there beneath the static. "And if he remembered, you probably tried to take the box from him before he was finished." Caleb lowered his eyes. Even now, Ryan knew exactly what he would do. "Before you turn this into another problem to solve, look at the photograph." Caleb set the recorder beside the open box and picked up the faded picture. It showed Ryan leaning against a training fence with Ghost sitting at his side, younger and alert, while Caleb stood a few feet away holding 2 paper cups of coffee. None of them were looking at the camera. Ryan was laughing at something outside the frame. Caleb was laughing too. He had forgotten that part. On the back, Ryan had written one sentence in black ink. "Remember the days that did not hurt." Caleb stared at the words until they blurred. The recorder continued. "You have always been good at carrying weight, Hayes. Give you a responsibility, and you will drag it uphill until your hands stop working. Give you grief, and you will do the same thing." Caleb sat down beside Ghost's treatment table. The shepherd opened his eyes, but did not move. "You will tell everyone you are fine because there is always somebody who needs more help than you do. You will answer duty calls. You will show up early. You will keep your boots by the door and your kitchen clean. And then one day you will realize you have built a life where nobody knows when you are lonely." Caleb looked away from the recorder. Lauren had quietly stepped into the hallway, leaving him alone with the voice and the dog. Ryan continued. "Do not turn surviving into another assignment." Caleb pressed his lips together. For almost 2 years, he had done exactly that. He had made routines out of absence. Early runs before sunrise. Extra hours at work. Grocery lists for one. Holidays declined with polite excuses. He had treated pain like something discipline could exhaust. Ryan's voice softened. The tags are mine. The patch is Ghost's first certification. The coin is from that terrible steakhouse outside Denver where you insisted the food was good because you had already paid for it. A broken laugh escaped Caleb before he could stop it. He picked up the worn challenge coin. Its edges were smooth from years of handling. The point is not how things ended. The point is that there was a whole life before the ending. Caleb rubbed his thumb across the coin. Ghost shifted under the blankets and stretched one paw toward him. Caleb moved closer until the paw rested against his wrist. The warmth surprised him. Ryan's message continued. There is a brass key in the box. Tomorrow, when Ghost is safe and you have stopped pretending you do not need sleep, go back to the old equipment building. Locker 18. Caleb looked at the small key resting beside the letter. The number 18 had been stamped faintly into the metal. There is no fortune in there, so lower your expectations. Caleb laughed again, but this time tears came with it. Quietly. No collapse. No dramatic release. Just 2 years of silence, finally finding somewhere to go. Ghost kept his paw against him. The recorder crackled once more. Whatever you find in that locker, remember this. Ghost was never just my dog. He was part of the team. So were you. The message ended. Caleb remained seated while the clinic heater hummed and snow softened against the windows. In one hand, he held Ryan's challenge coin. In the other, the brass key. For the first time that night, the ammunition box no longer felt like the mystery. It felt like a door. Morning reached the ranch in thin bands of pale light, turning the fresh snow outside the clinic windows almost silver. Caleb had slept for less than an hour in the chair beside Ghost, one hand resting near the edge of the blanket as if moving too far away might undo the progress of the night. Lauren returned just after sunrise, checked the German Shepherd again, and finally allowed herself a small smile. He is stable. Caleb looked down at Ghost. The dog was awake now, watching the room with clearer eyes. Can I leave for a little while? Lauren nodded. He needs rest more than company right now. Caleb slipped Ryan's challenge coin into his pocket and closed his fingers around the brass key. The old equipment building stood less than a mile from the main ranch, beyond the section that maintenance crews had reopened the day before. Snow still covered most of the path, but the wind had stopped. Without Ghost beside him, the route felt different. Quieter. Caleb passed the same markers he had followed the night before, but now there was no urgency pushing him forward. Only the weight of Ryan's voice. Locker 18 waited in the back corner of the equipment building beneath a row of dusty shelves. Caleb brushed frost from the metal door and inserted the key. It turned without resistance. Inside was a thin file folder, an old leather leash, and a sealed white envelope with Hayes written across the front. Caleb opened the folder first. Ghost's retirement records were clipped together with veterinary notes, placement history, and a caregiver preference form prepared nearly 2 years earlier. Caleb's name appeared on the final page. Preferred caregiver if future placement becomes necessary. There was no completed transfer. No signature from Caleb. Nothing that could decide the future for him. Just Ryan's intention, written down before anyone knew whether it would ever matter. Caleb sat on the wooden bench across from the lockers and opened the envelope. Ryan's handwriting covered only half the page. Hayes, if you are reading this, then circumstances did something neither of us could plan. Do not mistake this for an order. Ghost is not another responsibility I am leaving on your shoulders. Caleb paused. The next line was underlined once. He might be the reason you finally put some of that weight down. Caleb stared at the words. Ryan continued. If Ghost needs a home and you have room, consider it. If you do not, find him somebody good. He deserves a life after service. So do you. Caleb lowered the letter. Outside, melting snow slipped from the roof in slow drops. He looked at the old leash beside him and understood what Ryan had been trying to do. The ammunition box had not been a memorial. The locker was not a final instruction. Ryan had left a possibility, nothing more. He trusted Caleb enough not to decide for him. Caleb returned to the clinic before noon. Ghost lifted his head when the door opened. Caleb sat beside him and placed the old leash on the floor. I found it. Ghost sniffed the leather, then looked at him. Caleb rested a hand against the shepherd's neck. Ryan thought maybe you would need me someday. Ghost leaned quietly into his palm. Caleb looked toward the closed ammunition box near the wall. All night, he had believed Ghost had dragged Ryan's past through the snow. Now he understood the deeper truth. The box had carried memories. Ghost had carried a choice. Ghost remained at the clinic for 3 more days, and Caleb was there for most of them. By the second morning, the German Shepherd was eating on his own. By the third, he could cross the treatment room without his legs trembling beneath him. Lauren still watched every movement carefully, but the concern in her face had softened. "He is ready to leave tomorrow," she said. Caleb looked at Ghost, who was standing near the window with his ears forward, studying a squirrel moving through the snow outside. "Where does he go?" Lauren glanced at the paperwork on the counter. "That depends on what you decide." Caleb had spent 41 years becoming good at decisions. Orders, timelines, risk, responsibility. This one felt different because nobody was asking him to be strong. Ryan had made that clear. Ghost was not an assignment. Caleb walked over and crouched beside him. "You have had enough people deciding things for you, have you not?" Ghost turned and rested his head briefly against Caleb's shoulder. The next morning, Lauren handed Caleb the old leather leash from Locker 18. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the Colorado sky impossibly blue above the white foothills. Caleb clipped the leash to Ghost's collar and opened the clinic door. Ghost stepped toward the sunlight, stopped at the threshold, and looked back. Caleb waited. "Your choice." Ghost stared at him for a moment, then walked outside. Caleb followed. The drive to Caleb's cabin took a little over an hour. The house sat west of Colorado Springs, where pine-covered slopes gave way to open land and long views of the mountains. Caleb had chosen the place because nobody visited without calling first. Over time, that had become nobody visiting at all. Ghost noticed everything immediately. The water bowl Caleb had placed near the kitchen, the folded blanket beside the fireplace, the tennis ball still carrying a store sticker because Caleb had bought it that morning without knowing whether Ghost would care. He cared. By sunset, the ball was under the couch. By sunrise, Ghost was sitting beside the front door waiting. "It is 18 degrees outside," Caleb told him. Ghost did not move. Caleb reached for his boots. Their first walk lasted only 15 minutes. The second lasted 20. Within a week, Ghost was strong enough to follow the narrow trail behind the cabin for nearly a mile. Caleb began waking before the alarm because he knew the dog would be waiting. He opened the curtains before making coffee. He started cooking real meals again because Ghost always appeared in the kitchen at exactly the wrong moment. Then, one afternoon, Caleb's phone rang. The screen showed the name of a Marine he had ignored for months. Caleb almost let it go silent. Ghost looked up from the floor. Caleb answered. "Hayes." The voice on the other end paused. "You finally picked up." Caleb looked toward the open window where spring air moved the curtains. "Yeah," he said. "I did." 2 weeks later, Caleb returned to the ranch and completed the caregiver process properly. Lauren reviewed the documents. Caleb signed his name. Nothing from Ryan forced his hand. That mattered. When it was finished, Ghost sat beside Caleb's chair, calm and watchful. Caleb looked down at him. Ryan had believed the dog might need him someday. He had been wrong about only one thing. Ghost was not the one who had needed saving most. Caleb placed the retirement papers inside the ammunition box when they returned home, then closed the lid. The challenge coin stayed in his pocket. Ghost stayed beside him. And for the first time in nearly 2 years, Caleb stopped treating survival like something he had to do alone. Spring arrived slowly along the Colorado foothills, softening the last ridges of snow and turning the frozen ground dark with rain. Caleb noticed the season because Ghost noticed it first. The German Shepherd spent longer at the windows now, watching birds return to the pines and lifting his nose whenever warm air moved through the open door. His strength had come back completely. So had the steady confidence in his walk. Most mornings, he waited beside the trail before Caleb finished his coffee, patient but impossible to ignore. The cabin had changed too. The curtains stayed open. A second coffee mug sometimes sat on the porch when one of Caleb's old Marine friends stopped by. The phone no longer remained face down on the counter. None of it felt dramatic. That was what made it matter. One Saturday morning, Caleb stood before the shelf where the ammunition box had remained closed for weeks. Ghost sat nearby, watching him. Caleb lifted the box down and placed it on the table. The metal no longer felt like a warning. He opened the latch. Inside were Ryan's dog tags, the working dog patch, the old photograph, the folded letter, the recorder, the retirement papers, and the memories Caleb once believed would be too heavy to touch. He picked up the photograph and looked at the three of them beside the training fence. Ryan laughing. Ghost alert. Caleb younger, holding coffee and looking towards something beyond the frame. He turned the picture over. Remember the days that did not hurt. Caleb read the sentence once, then smiled. He returned the photograph to the box. The challenge coin was not there. That remained in his pocket. Some memories belonged on a shelf. Others were meant to travel. Caleb closed the lid and carried the box back to its place near the wood stove. Ghost rose immediately and walked to the front door. You have been waiting for that, have you? Caleb asked. Ghost's tail moved once. Caleb pulled on his boots and clipped the leash to the dog's collar. Outside, the morning was clear and cool, somewhere in the low 50s, with sunlight breaking through the pines in long golden strips. They followed the trail behind the cabin toward a ridge overlooking the valley. Meltwater ran beside the path, and new grass pushed through the wet soil. After nearly a mile, Caleb stopped at the overlook. Ghost stood beside him without pulling. Caleb reached into his pocket and rolled Ryan's challenge coin between his fingers. For almost 2 years, he had believed strength meant carrying everything quietly. Ryan had known better. Ghost had simply taken longer to remind him. Caleb looked down at the shepherd. You did your part. Ghost looked toward the trail ahead. Caleb unclipped the leash. The dog moved forward several yards, then stopped and turned back. Caleb did not hesitate. He followed. Behind them, the cabin door remained open to the morning air. The old ammunition box stayed closed on the shelf, holding what belonged to yesterday. Ghost kept walking toward the light between the trees. Caleb walked beside him. The box stayed behind. Ghost did not. Neither did Caleb.